The New York Rangers are going to be a very busy team this offseason as they look to go out there and hopefully make some big upgrades to this roster, as there are definitely some clear, pretty big holes on this team right now and some areas of need that really need to be addressed if this team, wants to be a real cup contender for next season, or at least even be a good playoff caliber team. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at the top 3 priorities for this offseason for the New York Rangers from Sam Heens of thehockeywriters.com, as he posted in his latest article there, the Rangers' top 3 priorities for this offseason. And we're going to kind of break this down here and take a look at the priorities. And I'm going to be honest, first off, I agree with all 3 of them. Now, whether or not you want to kind of argue about the kind of ordering of these priorities, that's fine and all, but these 3 are definitely some big priorities for the Rangers to address and kind of do this offseason. So we're going to take a look at this article and kind of break things down in today's video. And let's get things started off right away by taking a look at the number 1 priority here that Sam has listed, and that is re-signing Will Coolie. And to me, that is an absolute must. This is definitely a top priority for this team, and it has to be. Will is going to be, what I hope to be at least, a very good long-term player for this Rangers team. He brings a lot of exactly kind of what this team has been missing over the past years. Some physicality, some toughness, some, solid two-way play-out moments there, and I just think is a guy who can score potentially, 50, 60, 70, maybe even 80 points in the season there, around that point per game mark. I do think is somewhat of a possible kind of ceiling for a guy like Will Coolie there. He could definitely be around that kind of mark. I think if he does kind of reach his potential there, something around there is somewhat realistic. And you also got to remember, he has that nice physical play there, right? He's one of the top hitters in the entire NHL, especially among, forwards there on that side of things. And you also got to consider he is a pretty solid defensive winger as well. It's not like he's some, liability out there defensively. He's actually pretty solid there. Had a good little run there at moments on the penalty kill unit for the Rangers, and I would like to see him kind of more on that unit going forward as well. I do think he can be more than a plus kind of defensive winger while bringing that great offensive game and also having that amazing, phenomenal physical game as well, which the Rangers have been lacking massively over the years there. Physically and kind of the toughness, ability, the grit, that kind of side of things there, the Rangers have been missing, quite a bit of for many, many years now. And, of course, they addressed that a bit last offseason there by going out there and picking up a guy like a Sam Carrick there. I thought that was a nice addition to kind of add in a bit of grit and toughness there. Obviously, out of fourth line center, that's nice. But this team needed a kind of true top 6 forward who can bring some of that. They also went out there and added in a guy like JT Miller. Previously got a guy like Vincent Trocheck. They obviously have a guy like Will Coolie now, who I think has turned into a true top 6 forward, and is definitely going to be that going forward into the long-term future. So, in my opinion, you definitely obviously are going to be re-signing Will Coolie. Just kind of depends on the contract there. My guess is more of a shorter-term kind of bridge deal there, potentially around that kind of, $4 million cap it on like a 2-3 year deal. I don't know, something around there is somewhat possible, I think, but at the end of the day, I would rather a long-term deal. It's just I don't think that's going to happen there. I think the Rangers are probably going to go with a shorter kind of bridge deal to kind of keep that cap hit a bit lower so they can go out there and make some other kind of moves. But ideally, I would like to see this team go out there and sign him to that, 6, 7, 8 year deal, kind of lock up long-term there, because I do think he is someone who is going to be a very key player for years and years to come. There's not many guys in the NHL like him who can bring some great offense, can bring some great physicality, and can also be a, I would say, above average or at least average defensive winger, right? He is definitely at least that. So, in my opinion, he is definitely a top priority to re-sign for the Rangers this offseason. Next up here, we have for priority number 2, and that is fixing the blue line, which is an absolute must. It has to be a top priority for the Rangers this offseason. If they want to be a cup contender or be a good playoff caliber team with a chance of going on a run, I think that's an absolute kind of area of need that needs to be addressed. There are some question marks at the back end right now as well. You've got a guy like Carson Soucy, who is still in their books there. He is making $3.25 million for next season, just one more year. So one season there. Do you trade him away this offseason there after picking him up at the deadline? It was a bit of a disaster after he was picked up there, but it's not like he was the only kind of problem on the back end there, but he definitely was himself quite terrible. So that's kind of the game you got to play there. Does Mike Sullivan and Chris Drury and the coaching staff kind of think they can get a lot more of a guy like Soucy next season there, or do they look to trade him away because he does have a decent sized cap it there for one more season being $3.25 million. So if you can offload that, that would open up an extra good chunk of change there for the Rangers to be able to spend and try and use to upgrade this roster. So I think you got to make a decision on him there, of course, after you did give up a draft pick there, a third rounder to get him at the deadline. So a little unfortunate there. You're definitely not going to get that back for him now. And you also got a guy like Keandre Miller, who I think is another kind of big question mark as well, right? He is an RFA this offseason and is going to need a new deal. Now, do the Rangers offer him a nice new extension there around a $6 million cap, which is kind of my guess going to be something around there? Or do they look to go out there and trade him away and open up some more space there possibly and, not have to pay him all that money there and give him around $6 million cap hit? And then you're able to go out there and maybe sign a guy like a Vladislav Gavrikov or an Ivan Provorov, or maybe you go out there and you trade for someone like a Bowen Byram or someone else possibly, right? There are definitely some options out there, but the first thing is going to be kind of what to do with Keandre and Susie and Chris Drury and the coaching staff there with Mike Sullivan. They're going to have to make the decisions on those kind of guys, and they're going to have a massive impact because Keandre and Susie being on the roster for next season for the Rangers, that's going to be at least about $9 million worth of cap, right? That's a good amount of money. They're almost $10 million possibly for Keandre Miller and Susie combined for next season there. So if this team trades both of them away, you're saving a lot of money there. But if you keep both of them, then you have two guys there who may not be playing the best hockey for you and maybe a bit of a liability at moments, and you're paying them about $10 million, right? So there are definitely some question marks in the back end there, and they're a part of that, right? You got to decide what you're going to do with them, of course, and I think there are some solid pieces in the back end, though, right? Foxy, great defenseman. He's still elite. If you don't think he is, look at the numbers there. Watch him play. He is still an elite defenseman. Is he going to win the Norris next season there? Maybe not, but is he still going to be, I would say, like a top 5, 6, 7 defenseman for many, many years to come? I absolutely think so. Then you've got a guy like Braden Schneider there, Will Borgen, two very solid defensemen there, just kind of not great defensemen, but just solid guys, and I think Braden Schneider definitely has more to give than kind of what he's shown so far, so maybe they can kind of finally take that step in his game. You got a guy like Urho Vakanainen, who was a solid kind of 6/7 guy there. You got Matthew Robertson, decent prospect, more than likely will start in the AHL though, so you've got some kind of pieces on the back end here. You've got some decisions to make, but I think at the end of the day there, it's just about kind of what to do with Keandre and Susie, and then after that, you can kind of decide whether or not you're going to go out there and add in, another kind of huge piece via free agency or trade, because these two guys, they're kind of occupying a lot of cap space, so it's definitely going to play a bit of a factor in kind of what this team can do, upgrading not just the back end, but also the forward side of things, as well as, like I said, combined, Keandre Miller and Susie are going to combine for a cap at around $9 million for next season. And next up here, we've got for priority number 3, making space for the youth. And I absolutely agree with this as well, because you take a look at some of the top teams around the league, they have some of these kind of really good young players on these entry-level contracts or on these kind of, second deals, right? They're kind of first real deal after their entry-level contracts where they're still, signing as RFAs. They're still not making a ton of money there for the most part there, right? You need those kind of guys who can still play a good key role for you, and a perfect example of that is Will Coolie. Now, obviously, this past season did not go well for the Rangers, and it's not like Will contributed to this team being a great playoff team or something, but Will ended up taking a massive step in his game there as a guy, entering his second season in the NHL there, right? He had his rookie season where he was mostly on the fourth line there, didn't have a lot of kind of trust from the coaching staff, maybe, didn't get a lot of kind of chance there, but still played a decent role there in that bottom six on the fourth line for the most part there. Didn't put up a ton of numbers, but then you go into this past season where he took a massive step in his all-around game. Defensively, he got a lot better there, also helped out in the penalty kill unit there. We still saw that great physical toughness and kind of play that he still had in his rookie season there. That continued over until last season as well, which was great, but he also took a major step up offensively where he saw and himself put up some phenomenal point totals, right? So I think you need these kind of guys here who can be on these cheap deals. A guy like Will Coolie is a perfect example of that. And even in the past couple of years, we saw a guy like Lafreniere. He took that massive step as well eventually, which, obviously he didn't quite turn out to be that true number one overall kind of guy, but he still ended up taking finally a big step in his game. The Rangers need more guys who can take these big steps, and the Rangers need to be better at developing these young guys, which, given some opportunity to some of them and making space for the youth is kind of what's needed to do that. So that's why I think opening up some space and trading away a guy like Kreider so you have that extra spot open for someone like Gabe Perreault, like a Brett Berard, like a Brendan Hoffman makes a lot of sense to me. So I think after what we saw last season there, this team still has some work to do with developing young guys. It was nice that Will Coolie took a step there, but a guy like Braden Schneider, a guy like Keandre Miller, Offman, Perreault, Berard, can one of these guys take a big step in their development there? That's kind of the big question with this team right now. Can they have some of these young guys take some big steps up while also being able to kind of add in some good players on the forward side of things and the back end there? And if you can do both that while also having some of these young guys take some big steps up there and, have that kind of opportunity there and go with it and run with it, then this team can be in a really, really great spot going forward. So making space for the youth is definitely a big priority for this team, in my opinion. They need to do a better job at developing players. I think most fans will agree with me on that. This team has not done a very good job at that. So making space for the youth there and giving them opportunities there and trying to develop them better than kind of what this team has done in the past is definitely going to be a top priority for this team and definitely should be going forward into the future. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. I really do appreciate it if you made it this far. Definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts on these priorities here? Making space for the youth, obviously fixing that blue line, which is definitely a must, and also re-signing, of course, Will Coolie, who was a great breakout player for the Rangers this past season. Don't forget to comment down below, like I said, like and subscribe as well. It does help the channel out a ton, and I would really, really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one, and let's go Rangers.